All right. So I want to talk about, and I think this one is going to be a short one this time. This time is going to be a short one. So I want to talk about a little bit about business and the future of education, where I think business is going and where I think the future of education is going. And I might be a little bit late to the party on these ones. So if I am, I guess, whatever. But it's also, you never really know, right? Because if you consume certain things, or you adhere, you identify with certain ideas, and then you find yourself in certain spaces. Let me just shift the camera along a little bit. You find yourself in certain spaces where people are talking about certain things. You, in one way or another, find yourself in an echo chamber of sorts, right? And, so if you find yourself on the precipice of ideas, then, you'll come to the assumption that everybody knows what you know, and you'll think, oh, but it's so obvious, right? When, to the grander population, it's not necessarily that obvious. For instance, the AI is pretty big, prevalent, ubiquitous in the zeitgeist right now. And but you know, if you're somebody who's sort of like in the AI space, and you're up to date with the news and the technologies and all the different implementations, and you stay talking to people who are involved in those spaces, you are going to sort of have an edge on people who aren't on the day to day involved with those things, right? So you'll know, sort of what the trends are, what the new technologies are, and sort of where the technology is going, and the different kinds of things that are out there and available. And so you would think that the grander population is aware of all these things, what is available, where the technology is going, and the different ways that they can leverage and take advantage of that. But you'd come to find that most people still don't really know what ChatGPT is. And if they do know, they don't really know how to capitalize on its features, right? So you found yourself in sort of an echo chamber, and you're like, oh, but this is so obvious. Like, there's so many tools, utilities, so many different technologies and ideas that you can take advantage of and leverage to do whatever it is that you're trying to do, because you are involved in that space, in that echo chamber. And then once you step out, pull yourself out of that echo chamber, and sort of see the world at large, you'll recognize that the majority of people, it's not immediately obvious to them. They didn't know. They would have no way of knowing, right? Because they're not in those spaces, or they're not consuming that information. So just some perspective on that. Again, the whole introduction steez. Who am I? Yeah, I'm just a dude who's building a platform and documenting my process along the way. But I do have information, nuggets of wisdom, things I learn along the way that I want to share. And the things that I think I have sort of a unique perspective on, in one way or another, just because I'm interested in so many disparate faculties, different schools of thought, and so different perspectives, and then bringing them together and sharing them for people who otherwise wouldn't know, right? So sort of bridging that gap between this, that, and the other thing, and then sharing my experiences along the way. So that's who I am, I guess. I mention it a number of times in a variety of ways throughout the videos, but I don't have anything to sell you, right? So I'm just out here sharing is caring, and there's no point in having knowledge if you can't share it with anybody. Okay, cool. So let's start with business first. I think it's exciting. All right, so funny enough, we've seen over the years, especially with the proliferation of social media, the large corporations going in and sort of taking advantage of, and I think they've also been doing this legally in a variety of ways, which is not the most like ethical thing to do, but they're taking advantage of sort of personifying themselves, right? So, for instance, Coke as an example, Coca-Cola as a as an enterprise, as a big brand, is sort of humanizing itself, and then hopping on Twitter and speaking as though they were an individual, right? As if they were like a person, where it's not a person, it's an entire team, probably multiple teams of marketing geniuses that are there trying to make Coca-Cola more relatable, and more personified. So, you see it as an individual that you can identify with rather than, an entity, that the entity that it is, the behemoth, the global behemoth that it is. So that's sort of been like the past decade, I guess, and a trend that that a lot of large enterprises are hopping on. Businesses in general speaking to the people as though they were a person, as though they were an individual, and some of them even sort of claiming the rights of individuals as opposed to like sort of corporate entities and all the responsibilities that come with that, but sort of taking liberty to express themselves as a person. And so the rights and protections that come along with that. I'm gonna have to like find some sources and examples of that, because it's not immediately clear what the fuck I'm talking about, but that's a thing that's been happening. But even still, so we are, until now, until sort of this point in time, if you wanted to be like all big, you know what I mean, like that level thing, like IBM, Hewlett Packard, Coca-Cola, that kind of enterprise, Microsoft, you would really need to like, you would need to have a thing. Like you would need to have a fucking product and a business strategy that's so solid that you could go ahead and grow to those levels, right? So you as an individual would need, a team, investors, you would need, all sorts, to be able to reach those levels, right? You would need to be a corporation, you would need to be an entity, a large business, for the most part. And that's traditionally the way it needed to be because resources were limited, right? However, technology and its mass availability, like really high level technology being very straightforwardly attainable to the average person. And even if you don't have like top of the range tech, the average person has access to utilities that, maybe 15, 20 years ago, you would need to be like a mega corporation to have access to, like aggressive computing power and mass media marketing, like the reach and spread, to be able to run like email campaigns and advertising campaigns and newspaper and the radio and be able to put audio and video on platforms, run those kinds of ads and stuff. Now the individual can do that effortlessly, right? That's literally what I'm doing right here. I'm recording a video in my room with some pretty high tech gear, and this is old shit too, but it's still decent gear, right? Like my computer, my laptop has mega computing power if I wanted to do some like real AI related shit or like graphics and stuff. I don't need a fucking office with multiple, media, graphic designers, VFX artists and stuff. I could do it solo from my computer. I could create AI powered, technologies, platforms, solutions from my computer. I don't need a warehouse with servers and all of this stuff because the technology is available. And so what that has done, especially when it comes to reach, especially when it comes to marketing and advertising, with with the advent of social media and the improvements therein, what this has allowed is the individual to be able to be that business. Now, I'm not saying that you solo man one time can go and just like, compete with Microsoft. No shot. But what you can do is you can be a quote unquote solopreneur, right? With like a team of 3 people, if you wish. Maybe, you'll need more. You'll probably need more. But the effect of the personal brand being somebody who has a large audience and a large reach that you can reach out to directly is so powerful. And if you can figure out how to cultivate that, then you have a contact list, right? If you can acquire emails, you have a contact list of potential customers that is not governed by traditional, newspaper rules and regulations, radio rules and regulations, and the fees associated with that, obviously, who's not necessarily governed by the algorithm, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, X, whatever, the algorithm and them determining who you can reach out to and how you can reach out to them, et cetera, sort of paid media. If you're able to cultivate a reach, a following of people who, fuck with you, really, for lack of better words, and are able to communicate with them directly, then you as an individual, if you have a product or a service that you can offer them, are able, or hypothetically would be able to, and many people have done this, the likes of Dan Coe and them, for example, are able to pull in some serious numbers. And we're talking about serious numbers. I don't have his financials, but if I'm going to take him at face value, if I'm going to take his word for it, my man's pulling in numbers, right? Like in the 6 7 8 figures as a quote unquote solopreneur as an individual, right? With, he probably has a team. You can't carry the burden of an entire business on his shoulders. But we're talking about doing mega numbers where, just a few years in the past, he would need to be a fucking business, like a full-on enterprise with multiple teams of people doing multiple things, all in the name of, the what's the word I'm looking for? All in the name of the ideals of the business, and the goals effectively of the business. So, that now leads the average person, quote unquote, in a very interesting position where, with the resources that are readily available, Instagram is free, Twitter is free, YouTube is free, and, some of these platforms will even pay you to create. So not only is it free, it has the potential to make you money if you can figure out how to do it right. And then, getting direct access and information, getting direct, contact information to your ideal customer client base, which, the likes of Coca-Cola would spend millions on trying to cultivate that and be able to get their target audience. But if you can build your target audience with free social platforms, now you just have a list of potential customers that you can fucking email just directly. What is your offer? And then get the people who are willing to pay for it because they find value in it. And now you're just a one-man business. Cha-ching, motherfucker. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's very fascinating. And, I feel like that's really the direction things are going in, like in a big way, in a really big way, because now you've just got sort of an individual, or at least the image of an individual who is actually an individual, not Coca-Cola pretending to be a person, but who is actually an individual who has a particular service, product or service that they're making available to the people who engage directly with, who identify with the persona and with the product or service. And I think that's fascinating, right? There's like the future is in content creation. That's sort of the sentiment. And then a lot of people would argue, the contrary and say, well, it'll only last for so long before the next thing pops off. But think about, the power in this and where this is going. And this is going to lead sort of directly into where I think education is going, right? Because in comparatively with the education space, before it started off with somebody knew something, and then he would take, some students and then teach those students under a tree, whatever, if you want to get like old school, like the way they did with philosophy and stuff. And then all of those sort of professors, those people were put together in a facility where it was understood that if you wanted education, it's there and accessible to everybody. So schools and universities, right? So it went from like you as an individual knowing something about something and then teaching the people that are immediately available to you and the people who are interested in the thing that you had to teach. And then, some clever business people or, whatever, a for-profit, non-profit, I don't know, the fucking, just whatever the case may be. It's both, really, it's both ways. But, a clever individual was like, hey, why don't I just get sort of like the brightest minds and house them in one location so that everyone who is interested can just go, and you'll always find the information there, as opposed to having to fucking walk around and then find Socrates. Like, where the hell is Socrates? I don't know. But after the universities and schools are put in place, you're like, okay, there, I'm gonna find Socrates here Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 2 p.m. That's where I'm gonna get my education. All right, sweet. Sounds good. Sick deal for everybody. And then you have access to multiple schools, right? Schools of thought, multiple professions, multiple various domains of interest that you can all get in one place. Okay, that's awesome. That sounds good, right, on paper. And then it became like this huge money making situation. It became a business, right? Education became a business. And so that held true and very strong for a long while. But is interesting, the direction it took, because now, because again, the ubiquity of technology and its mass availability, effectively for free, we're sort of going back, right? We're circling back into you having particular knowledge about a particular thing, and then being able to directly communicate with people who want to know that particular thing. And now you have a one man school, right? Basically, you do. You set up a community where people can have access to you and take advantage of your knowledge and what you have to offer, what you're willing to share with them. Which is really fascinating, because it's like, now, instead of having to go to university and then deal with their entire program and spend a king's ransom to get access to this information, of course, you're paying for a variety of things, but ultimately, you're paying for access to information, structured access to information. And, so for a lot of people, they're like, I don't need to do all of that. I don't need all of that. Why am I paying for all of these other resources that I don't need, I'm not going to take advantage of, or I don't feel are valuable in my learning experience? Now if you want to know a computer, computer programming and some computer science or something, you can just go and find somebody online who is in the computer science, right? They have a track record. They've proven that they're capable of doing it to whatever degree of proficiency that satisfies you. And then you can just go and learn it directly from them. And if you're going to pay them some guaps, it's going to be significantly less than anything a university would charge you, right? So now you're not worried about, oh, and then I need to take electives so I can be a well-rounded student. And it's like, no, I just need to learn the shit. You're not going to go into a university course where it's going to be 5 years of like stuff. You know what I mean? I mean, yeah, and there's, good intentions there. They want you to really know from like the history to the basics, and then we expand and a little bit about data, and you know about coding, programming, and then about data structure and memory and resource allocation, and so you're like a full-fledged, you know what I mean? But again, undergrad is undergrad, right? You learn all the fundamentals so that you can specialize after the fact. What if you just wanted to straight up specialize? What if you're just like, look, I'm just trying to be a beast at machine code, right? Like I want to be a beast at binary, ones and zeros. Like let me get to the you know what I mean? Instead of the higher level programming languages, I want to be a beast at this thing. And you could take homie's course, 6 weeks, 6 months, whatever, pay him however much he's charging you for the course, 2 grand, sure. But that's it, done deal, 2 grand. You know everything that you need to know from somebody who's deep in it and who has gotten their jobs and who has resources and research information and, everything. Similarly, you could do the same thing with art. Instead of going to art school and doing all of this, that, and the other thing, you could be like, no, I'm just in a 3D. I just want to do 3D. You find a guy with a strong community in 3D and then learn 3D, right? Like a lot of these disciplines don't have a governing body, right? A lot of these disciplines, every university is going to teach them different. And then who's to say, like, who dictates which university did it the best way and whatever? It ultimately comes down to your proficiency. What's your portfolio? Can you actually do the thing that you say you can do? And if you're able to do the thing that you say that you can do and are able to do it well, then you're employable, right? So it doesn't matter that you have a university degree in it. It doesn't mean shit, because you can have a degree and still not know shit, or still not be able to produce the work. Or you cannot have a degree but are top level because you drilled in on the shit that really matters for the job that you're gunning for. And so, I mean, obviously, caveat, right? This only works for things that, again, do not have like a governing body. Like, if you want to be a lawyer, you gotta go and like be a part of the law association or whatever, right? Like you gotta qualify to be a lawyer, practicing lawyer. If you want to be a doctor, you need to go into med school. You need to go into university and, get all the information necessary, go to med school and then qualify and then like, prove that you are actually capable, instead of coming off of some online school and being like, yeah, no, I'm qualified as a brain surgeon. Like, no, sir. Let's not do that one. But, a lot of other, accountant, you'd need to be chartered and whatever before anyone sort of like took you seriously because you're dealing with like serious business. But a lot of other schools of thought, a lot of other disciplines do not require that, right? Business, technology and coding, arts and arts, just the arts domain in general, whether it's graphic design or Foley or VFX, sound engineering, whatever the case may be, all those things, it's a culinary, there's so many, everything else that universities were like, oh, how about we go ahead and take advantage of this and make a school for it? It's like, no, it never needed to be one. It's just the average person didn't have the resources to be able to learn it by themselves. But now it's so readily available that, anybody with domain experience and valuable domain experience can they themselves become the professor of a community and teach valuable information. And it's crazy. It's so cool that that's possible because, for one, it gives the person with that experience and domain expertise the, potential, the possibility of monetizing that and making something good for themselves. But it also removes a lot of the nonsense and the junk to the student, and then gives them directly the thing that they want to learn. And then like it's super laser focused, it is that thing, and significantly shorter than trying to get an entire undergrad degree, right? So it's like, your process has been accelerated, so many times over, and you can go directly into the thing that you want to do. And so in short, I really think that is where the evolution of business and education is going. Now, again, this is not really brand new, and I might be late to the party for people who are already aware of this. I mean, I've been aware of it. I just really see it now, like really coming together and being the way things might look in the future. And, almost guaranteed the way things are going to look in the future, especially with AI getting involved. But for a lot of people, this might not be immediately obvious that, yeah, you can go and get a full data analysis, level training from YouTube University. You know what I'm saying? And if you want to like pay somebody who is in the weeds, who is like, a data analysis at like KPMG or like Deloitte or something, and, has that experience, has those connections, has all of this. And he's like, listen, these are really stripped down. This is the shit that matters. This is what I'm going to teach you. And you'll get it done in 6 months, a year, fuck 4 years at university. Drilled down, this is it, value for your money. And, any other sort of discipline that you might want to go into. The interesting thing is how we're going to go about sort of, creating those certificates and forms of validation to sort of validate that, yes, the knowledge that you have is relevant and actually not dangerous, or you actually do know what you say so that you don't end up getting hired and then these guys are like, oh, but what the fuck. You had all these projects and everything, but now you're in a real working environment and you can't produce the work. What's going on? So that's going to be really interesting. But sort of being able to certify and validate the indie professional, in a sense, the indie student who didn't go to a university, because that's really what you're paying for in a lot of ways. The university stamp, right? Seal of approval. Not that it's like, it sort of validates that you actually know stuff, but if you get a degree, the assumption is, okay, you probably know some shit, right? Like you passed the courses and the university is vetting, vetting, yeah, but they're vouching for you that you actually know what you claim to know. And so I'd be very interested to see how that extends itself to sort of the indie, solo, what can I call it? Like miniature schools, the zoned in sort of direct, distilled schools of the communities that exist, right? And I think it's just funny. School.com is a hub for people to create their courses and teach directly, right? Cut out the middleman, straight to market. And I think it's funny that it's called school.com because I think that's very telling of where they think education is going. And it's exactly that. So I find that incredibly fascinating. And I think that's going to be really powerful and really beneficial to a lot of people. So yeah, I just wanted to share a little bit of information on that. Might expand on this a little bit later in the future, talk a little bit more about it as things unfold. But yeah, I think it's definitely worth a conversation. So one, business, the sort of availability of the solopreneur, and the actual ability of an individual to go ahead and create a really, you know, a really profitable business, one man, single man, quote unquote, very small team, but you're doing numbers, remote team. You don't need an office. You don't need a headquarters. You don't need this, that, and the other thing. It's service provision directly to the people who find value in your work. So effectively that should be available to anybody, so long as, you play the game right, and you have the right ideas. And then number two is the education space, and where that's going, and how, the next generation, for instance, will not really at all need to go to school or university. Well, maybe school, like elementary school, but basic foundational learning is probably very valuable. But when they want to specialize in the thing that they want to specialize in, they don't need to go to university. They can just find the creator who is creating the shit that they want to know about and want to do for a career, and then get in directly with them in that community of like-minded individuals, which is effectively a school. It's a university, but without paying a king's ransom for university, and just getting the direct information that they want without all the other fluff. I think that's fascinating. And I think, this is a good time to sort of take advantage of the way those things are going, if that is of interest to you, which it is to me. Okay, so that's that. Just wanted to share all this business. Yeah, subscribe, all that.